Peace. What's up, everybody? Welcome, welcome. I'd like to go ahead and tell you guys to go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel. If you're not subscribed to the channel, I got something special for y'all today. Now, I will admit this is rather late because I should have done this months ago when this show first came on my radar. But in the process of trying to get my scheduling and everything together and planning out my content, I finally sat down to give y'all this Sandman breakdown. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to go ahead and break down the Netflix series called The Sandman. Now, when this came out back in August, I was getting so many inquiries, so many inboxes. A lot of people were asking about this show, do a breakdown for this show. And at the time, I was so, bombarded, so overwhelmed with so much work at the time. I didn't really sit down or get the time to sit down and record it. But here we are, here we are, here we are. Better late than never. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do it and we're going to put it out. Now, I'm going to do the breakdown for the whole season. We're going to look at all the little bits, frame by frame, episode by episode. We're going to really break it all the way down. And this is one of those shows where, if we are fortunate enough to get some additional seasons, we can just add on to the breakdown and do those additional seasons as well. But we'll see how it goes. So, for the most part, let's go ahead and let's get into it. Let's go ahead and talk about this a little bit now. The series, The Sandman, if I'm not mistaken, is presented or is written for TV or what have you by I'm not quite sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, but Neil Gaiman, I believe his name is. And what I do know about him, this is the gentleman who's responsible for American Gods. So, as a big fan of American Gods, and with all of the symbolism that was in that show, and I I will admit that I haven't read any of his books, so I was put on to the fact that he's a writer, and these series are stemming from his writings from his book or from books. So in that case, that gives you a whole nother different eye because when you get into books, there's way more detail, there's way more things for you to dissect versus when it's made for TV. So, if you are familiar with any of his books, with any of his works, I'm pretty sure that you can attest to what it is that I'm saying. So, he is the writer behind American Gods, as I stated before. American Gods is probably a show that I also do a breakdown on because it's so symbolic. There's so many things that was in it, metaphysically, lining along the myth and the philosophy and the spiritual science that come along with the myths. Because whether we realize it or not, when we study myth, we are basically studying ancient astrophysics. We're studying ancient higher science, ancient or higher means of these sciences from antiquity. So that's just to kind of start things out. But we're gonna go ahead and get into the breakdown, right? So, Sandman. Now, I was first introduced to Sandman when I saw the movie um, Rise of the Guardians. So I'm not familiar. I didn't grow up learning about the Sandman. I don't know if that's more of a European thing or something that's more accustomed to European culture. Out of Europe, possibly or maybe so. But I was first introduced to Sandman with Rise of the Guardian. So Sandman being associated with dreams and also being associated with nightmares, even though they don't really tell you that in Rise of the Guardians. But you can put two and two together because Pick, who is the embodiment of fear of the boogeyman, had to get rid of the Sandman in order to in order to bring his nightmares to life, in order for there to not be anyone who could truly oppose, be in opposition to what it was he was doing, which would be Sandman. Because all he could do was turn the kids' dreams into nightmares, right? So he was pretty much, very much the same as Sandman, just at different spectrums, right? So between the boogeyman, between the Sandman. So here in this series, we know we learn Dream. He's called Dream of the Endless, or Lord Morpheus, or what have you, the King of Dreams and Nightmares, the King of Dreams. So he's one of the Endless. Now, when it comes to talking about the Endless, there is, if I'm not mistaken, there are seven of them. Let me look it up to be very precise with you guys, so we can make sure I don't misinform you. Okay, so let's see. When we are talking about endless, from oldest to youngest, is destiny, death, dream, destruction, desire, despair, and delirium, who was previously known as delight. So that's seven: destiny, death, dream, destruction, desire, despair, delirium, or delight. Seven. Of course, it's seven because we know the symbology behind seven, the representation of seven. It's like spiritual completion is representing the spiritual temple. So that's why you get systems of seven when you're talking about the seven chakras, as well as, 7 days of the week. That's why a lot of things can align with the number seven because of the power of what seven entails. All right, so Dream is one of the seven endless. And these are powerful beings that are older than gods, pretty much. So can't call them gods; they're older than gods. And there's countless names that Dream is referred to as, such as Neros. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's out of Greek mythology. Morpheus and Sandman. So he was the personification as well as the Lord of Dreams and reality. Okay, so when we thinking about, a lot of times there's a lot of instances in it where, like, what's the importance of dreams? And he pretty much gives you, dreams are pretty much the motivation behind the decisions that we make in life. So dreams are very important because dreams are connected to the soul. Now, is everything about the endless, the seven endless, is kind of connected to the soul, so to speak. So that's why when you say older than gods, you're talking about a specific type of energy, where it's coming from. Really, more referring to chaos energy, that chaos darkness, the feminine creative energy of the universe, or whatever the case may be. So it's an unfathomable or an unimaginable energy. We can't fathom what the soul is. We can't describe it. There's no means of describing it. We can attempt to. We can bring it to a human perspective and we can attempt to. But it's not something that we actually can do. Just like the source, or the all, or what is the source of everything, or which one some people denote to God, but you can't really personify what that is. It's not anything that you can bring into words, so to speak. And it's kind of the same way when you're talking about the soul. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about that type of source energy, or that particular type of energy, and what we're talking about. Okay, so now, in as far as saying, man, when we're talking about dream came into existence once life forms were capable of dreaming appeared in the universe. So as soon as the concept of dreaming came in appeared in the universe, with the first living being that had the ability to dream, that in itself is how dream, or when dream came into existence. All right, so being one of the endless, like I said, it's a personification. It's a personification of The endless themselves are personifications of ideas and concepts that are tied to life. So and what we're fated to fulfill, you know, until the universe is no more, until all life has disappeared from the cosmos. So everything that makes that up, death, destruction, despair, dreams, destiny, these things are connected to or tied to the concept of what we call life. All right. So the endless are children of time and night is the mother of at least dream. Okay, so that's why we pretty much affiliate dreams, with the darkness, with nighttime, with sleep, because that's when we typically sleep when the sun sets. Now Morpheus is also a name. This is what he's known as. He's known as Morpheus. That's his name. We're familiar with the name Morpheus. We met Morpheus or the name Morpheus in terms of the Matrix. Right? Now Morpheus means form or shape. So he could form and shape the dreams of the sleeping. So Morpheus was part of the Oniroi, um, or the Aneroi, however you pronounce it. My linguistics is horrible, yo. So don't come to me about how to properly pronounce stuff, right? But these are dream spirits. It's referring to dream spirits or like a brotherhood of dream spirits. So in Greek mythology, they were the winged spirits of dreams. And Morpheus is their leader, as only he had the skill to influence the dreams of gods and kings. So that's the name Morpheus here as well. So Morpheus comes out of, like I said, out of Greek mythology, the name Morpheus. Now we are, like I said, we're familiar with the name Morpheus in terms of the Matrix, and if you look at it, it kind of fits because Morpheus in the Matrix was waking people up, or he was pretty much like responsible for those who woke up. So it's still in connection to sleeping, in connection to um, form or the shape. So shaping the minds or shaping the consciousness of those who come into awakening, or at least um, or at least providing with the spark that shapes these, the people. As far as when we're looking at the Matrix, when we're talking about the Matrix, right? He was also a leader or the leader in the Matrix. Now, so Morpheus, and some may refer to him as More or as the More, saying More free us, which is homage to the More, the knowledge of the Moors, which can free us, the knowledge of the Moors, those who can free us, the navigators, the knowledge of, or to free those who are asleep or to wake the sleeping, right? So that's just a little backdrop. We're just talking about the name, so to speak, right? Now, in episode one is called Sleep of the Just. And in this episode, while searching for a nightmare that escaped and was preying on the waking world, Morpheus is captured by a man named Roderick Burgess. He's an occultist who's looking to summon and imprison Death, which is his sibling, which is one of the Endless. And he was a Lord Magus of the Order of the Ancient Mysteries. So it's kind of, to say the Order of Ancient Mysteries is kind of like a generalization, because all of your secret orders were ancient mysteries or a part of ancient mysteries. So this is just symbolic of your typical white European occultists of this time coming into this knowledge and this information. This is what they did. They got involved in these type of things to provide themselves with these things that they desire: immortality, money, power, to the typical yada yada yada, because they can't see a spiritual need for these things. Everything is all logic and physical to these type of individuals. And it was stated in one of your later episodes that he's was seen as a rival to an Aleister Crowley. So they make that note, they want to put that in there to kind of provide you with an insight as into just how much into this he was, and you can see how much he was into it, because you see them performing rituals and everything. I mean, he actually does capture Dream, or he captures Morpheus, even though he did it by total happenstance. He got lucky because he wasn't even looking to capture Dream. He wanted to capture Death, but due to the circumstances and how everything lined up, he captured Dream. Unfortunately, it's so many jewels that's dropped all over this show. So when watching a show like this, you have to pay attention to the dialogue. The dialogue is a big factor, because a lot of things that are said provide you with a great amount of context into the symbolism, or into what is trying to be portrayed to you. Because mind you, everything that we get pertaining to this information is still based off of somebody else's interpretation. So your need to be aligned or in tune with your own spiritual self, your ability to go within for your answers, or your spiritual discernment, your ability to spiritually discern, is very important, because you have to discern spiritually what you're going to take and what you're going to throw away. Because, like I said, we are dealing with these things through the interpretation of others. So, depending on who these others are, depending on what's their motivation, depending on where their, what's their intention, depending on if they themselves have any type of spiritual understanding, or if they're tapped in at all, or if they're just using a logical mind. Because if that's the case, they're just logically telling you something about something that's metaphysical. That's why so many spiritual things are misinterpreted, and that's because we are dealing with having to be told this from a third party source. So whatever their goal is, whatever their agenda is gonna filter into what that information is entailing. So you gotta practice discernment. That's why you can't read just one book on astral travel. You gotta read 4 or 5 of them, and you have to allow your inner self to decipher and work through that information. That's and then in that process, you get your downloads. That's how you get your downloads. That's how you are able to discern through the information. That's why sometimes you can read information on something, and once you internalize it, you take it to spirit, you take it into your inner world, and to bring that back out, to express that back out, it may come out in a totally, it's gonna come out in a totally authentic, unique manner to your own understanding. And that's the point of it, because it's all about how you are perceiving your reality, right? So when you're talking about ancient mystery systems, understand that we have so many religions today because all of the mystery schools, the mystery teachings from those religions, or what those religions are built off of, are now gone. See, we don't have those anymore. All we have is the religion. The religion is like the leftover dogma. It's like, it's not the metaphysical teachings. So you have to dig deeper for that. You have to do your own work for that. So that's the point of studying the occult. That's why I advise people to look into the occult, because most of the time, especially when you're dealing with those older occult books, they're not as filtered, um, with the disclaimers that we get today. So, like, things that could be discussed and talked about in an occult manner may only still remain in those occult books, and may no longer be a part of like your main information. And that's because of what has been done with the occult. See, the occult has been demonized. So everything from your ancient spiritual teachings, or your ancient mystery teachings that predate the religions, gonna fall under that umbrella of being seen as demonic, evil, etc., etc., because it is necessary for the perception of the reality we've been given in order for this shit to work. Because it's all a spell in terms of you buying into the perception that you've been given, so that it can be a reality. So because we buy into because we buy into it, That's why it's here. That's why it is what it is. Why it has the power that it has, because we've all bought into it. So that's the point of controlling the mind, is so you can control the reality. Now, like I said, it's a lot of Jews all over the show. So pay attention to the dialogue when you're watching shows like this, because that's where the fillers are. So aside from colors, symbols, dialogue as well, right? That's how you fill in the blanks. So when the show first opens, very first episode, when that episode Sleep with the Jets, when it first opens up, it starts with Dream talking to us or narrating, and he's saying in the waking world, which humanity insists on calling the real world, as if your dreams have no effect upon the choices that you make. You mortals go about your lives, your love, your wars, etc., as if your waking life is all that matters. But there's another life that awaits you when you close your eyes and enter my realm, for I am the king of dreams and nightmares. What is this world that he's talking about? In the show, they refer to it as the dreaming world or the dreaming realm. So, in a sense, because we have to know there's more than just this physical body of ours, we have a spiritual body, we have a soul body. Now, the soul body is connected to source. As I stated before, it's like the highest, it's incomprehensible. Your spirit body, spirit, everything, everybody, if animation has a spirit, everything has a spirit. So, we talking about it's you can more so express your spirit in your spirituality versus soul, because your soul is, again, it's incomprehensible. It's almost like saying source. It's like your true self, the true light, your true being, who you truly are. If you were to be able to strip yourself of all of the physical, of all of these things, of this realm, of this reality. So when he's talking about the dreaming, every night when you go to sleep, your soul leaves your body, right? Your soul leaves your body. It's called astral traveling, astral projecting. So that world that you go to is the world that he is referring to. Now, we saw when you look at Doctor Strange, when something goes on in a dream, it's pretty much a window into another world, because even we can look at it like this is just some simple superhero comic, but understand the concepts of these things go back to myth. They go back to astrophysics. So when you talking about them people that was over there in Switzerland trying to turn that machine on because they're trying to find a God particle, this is what they are talking about. See, the ancients already understood this and knew what it was. They was just talking in a different language. We just now catching up or attempting to catch up. They just spoke on it in a symbolic form. The Dogon people said we're from Sirius B. And nobody could knew what that was or knew what that meant until they were actually able to invent the Hubble telescope and be able to see it. But how did these people already know that it was there? How would they know that? Because that's ancient knowledge. It's ancient information. See, but we live in a world where today where we validate via modern science. But modern science is a baby in comparison. It's merely only catching up, providing evidence to all the things that the ancients said long ago. Okay, so as his narration continues, he goes on to say, when the waking world leaves you wanting and weary, sleep brings you here to find freedom and adventure, to face your fears and fantasies and dreams and nightmares that I create and which I must control, lest they consume and destroy you. That is my purpose, or it was. So this is dream of the endless speaking. So remember, always remember, when you are observing a story, the aspects of the story relate to you. So, as I stated before, this is in relation to an aspect of your soul, because you know how even spiritually, how we say we have to get sleep, your body has to rest spiritually. Rest and sleeping is good for you, but you see, the soul doesn't sleep. The soul doesn't need sleep. So when you do sleep, your soul is traveling. So it's important that we know that this is the ultimate story. Like, this is the Gnostic story. This is the origin story. This goes back to the story in the mystery that talks about how your soul got into this 3D physical realm, as far as being a creator, being in a higher realm, and falling into a lesser realm, or going into a lesser realm and getting trapped in that lesser realm, or falling asleep, falling into a slumber in that lesser realm. So that in itself ties into that original, the original story, the original thing of what it was all about when it comes to the mysteries, because it's going back from whence you came, back to source. So back to those higher realms. So that's also part of that symbology in the meaning of this story. So he goes, and it's because it's also in reference to those, the fallen ones. So when we fail from higher beings into the lower realm, we forgot a lot of things. We forgot everything in terms of who we truly were, and how to get back, and how to be who it is that we was. So everything ultimately is to acquire that knowledge back, or to remember that knowledge again, so that you can transcend or ascend when it's time for you to go, pretty much, so to speak. So that's another aspect of when you're looking at the soul. That's why there's the endless, who broken down in the seven. And that's all of those seven things are what makes up the human experience. That's what the soul wanted to experience. It's portrayed, the only way to explain it, or the way that it's portrayed, is as beauty. This is why you see the connection between Lucifer being connected to beauty, etc., etc., because it's about seeing it as a form of beauty. So being so taken with the beauty of it all, the illusion, the physical illusion, falling pretty much in love with their reflection, and boom, those higher beings into the lesser realms, or into the physical, into the 3D world, i.e., why he has three tools. Pardon me about that. So that's his role. So we are personifying aspects of the all anyway. So everything is has to be put into a concept of an entity. That's why man created God, because we had to, in order to interpret it from our perspective of human, you had to personify it. And that's what all of the deities represent, different forms of expression of the all, but it's all rooted from one source. So this is common, this is just basic common spiritual foundation. There's not a belief in God in terms of what creates all that there is. There's just different ways of expressing how that energy can work, how that energy can play out. Whether people want to look at different gods, or whether people want to look at different angels or different attributes, however you want to lay it out and interpret it, that's based on what it is, because ultimately every spiritual system is based on the region, the language, all of those play into what and how things are labeled, but it's pretty much always giving you the same story. So it's all rooted in the same spiritual concepts. It's just depending on where you are, it's depending on how you're going to be taught that to interpret that. Now, granted, today with religion, it's pretty much just degenerated or decayed old world spiritual systems. That's what you have left in religion. Religion is pretty much all of the leftover things that's left from those spiritual mystery systems. So when you get to studying Christian mystery in terms of Christian the religion, you'll get a vast difference of what the knowledge does for you. Because one is going to be way more empowering to you and relative to you and your role and who and what you are. So that's pretty much kind of the difference of it. So if you're gonna look into, if a person is a Muslim and pretty much always had the traditional Muslim or Islam, then you have Sufi mystery, which is this was considered the mystery system or the old world spiritual system that's before what has later they been laid out into just you know the religion of Islam. So in terms of that, when you go back to the mystery, you are going back to the depths of the stories. What are the stories telling you? Because that's what myths are. Those myths and legends and allegories hide within them certain higher knowledge. And for those who have been initiated, which means they've been taught the understanding of these symbolic references, then they get a totally and completely different interpretation of the story. So it's one way to the masses or to the sheep, but it's a totally different story of interpretation to those who know. So that's the difference of it in terms of looking at it that way. So when we're looking at dream being one of the endless, which again there's seven endless, just like there's seven chakras, or ordinarily seven planetary rulers. It's basically just a description of a system, of a means of understanding the spiritual system. Okay, so dream is that part of you, is what represents your dreams. And what comes from your dreams also can come your nightmares, and what can lead you or influence you to make certain decisions in this 3D world reality. And that's what the show is kind of showing you the whole entire time. And it's just, I mean, it's a lot of other things in it, but we're gonna go over all of that. But so dream represents mastering one's dreams and nightmares, understanding how to use them to get everything that you want, utilizing that power. But it is a chaos power. That's why everything is so dark. That's why he wears the all black. It's the dark figure, the absorption of the energy, the just the way he kind of is. It's just kind of presentation of that energy, but it's to your nightmares, as you can see, or so you can face your fears, so these are things. That's what that represents. Okay, so when dream is locked away, this is what happens when we lose control over this part of ourselves, or when that part of ourselves is lost from us. But we're gonna get all into that anyway. But so when we see in the beginning, one of the uh, more important symbols that we see is his helmet. Okay, so he wears the helmet of dreams. It's like a mask. It looks like the plague doctor mask. That's exactly how it's shaped, or what it can remind you of. Um, but the helm, his helm serves as one of his three symbols. It's one of the three symbols of his power. So, and it's his helm along with his sand pouch, or his pouch of sand, and the dream stone or his ruby stone. So, and it's three. So when we're dealing with the symbology of three, just like the Trinity, three is also symbolic to the 3D world when something come in three. So these three things are what ground him in the waking world and allows him to be himself in the world, because the dreaming world is a spirit realm. It's a spirit world. The waking world It's the 3D realm. It's the physical realm. So you kind of have to fall. It's a lesser realm because it's more dense. It's dealing more with matter. Um, because it's the real, it's the 3D world, as he says. You call it the real world versus the sleeping world when you go to sleep. So the three is can be symbolic to meaning or in representation of the 3D world. So he has these three items, these three things that kind of enhance his power, and these are what he always takes with him when he goes into the physical world. Now, the ruby is known to be, if you're looking up the properties of ruby, it's associated with improving your energy, vitality, also your concentration, creativity. Is good for loyalty, honor, compassion. So ruby is thought to be protective, like it protects one's possessions, one's family. It's said to stimulate the heart chakra also, but it's also seen as a root chakra stone itself. So it brings spiritual wisdom while shielding against attack, both physical and psychic. So it's a stone of good fortune, stone of protection. The vitality, that's why it gave longer life. It grants dreams, makes dreams come true. It's red, so aligning with the root chakra, the material world. So making dreams come true into the physical. So, um, also in the sense of the body, boosting your energy levels because it's connected to life force, like red, like blood. So it gets you grounded. So ruby is seen as one of the four precious gemstones along with diamond, sapphire, and emerald. So these are your more popular stones that you see on jewelry and what have you. So spiritually, ruby represents a burning bright light in the darkness. All right, so it's a burning bright light in the darkness. And whenever one has come to a sense of mastery, that is the realization of the light in the darkness. That is one going into the darkness and bringing forth or realizing that they are that light. So, being the king of dreams and nightmares, of course, you know, as a ruler, as a lord, this is what he is capable of. This is what these titles represent. This is what they are telling you about who he is, his character, his power. So the helm it serves as his sigil. So it's a sigil, and a sigil is like a symbol. It's a seal. It's a stamp. So it's like a symbol of. It's like a brand symbol. So when you see a certain symbol, you know what that is. So you see the helm, that pretty much automatically represents Dream or Morpheus or Lord Morpheus. So he wears the mask. It's also in connection to the whole DC character of wearing the mask when it was the gas mask to protect. But there's a little connection and all that went in there, but we not gonna really. It is not important here. But because in the beginning we see Morpheus or Sandman or Dream, the Lord Dream pursuing a nightmare that was causing problems, wreaking havoc in the waking world. And dreams and nightmares are not to be in the waking world. So, um, that's pretty much what we see him getting ready to do because that's what he does. He controls nightmares, so he can go and because they're not allowed to do things of that nature, torment the actual real world. So that's like a nightmare getting loose, something that's supposed to potentially be made for a purpose of fear being faced. That's what nightmares are for. So, and then in this, we also meet Lucian, the librarian, and she's asking if he comes back, if he's coming back, and he's like, why would I not come back? You know what I'm saying? Why would you ask me that? Of course I'm coming back. And it's funny because she asks him that and she responds with, I don't know, a presentiment. And she's a precise word. Presentiment is a very selective word of choice because it basically means I just have a feeling. It's just an intuitive feeling, like a premonition or something. So she had a bad feeling about him leaving at this particular point in time. So although he's an all-powerful dream lord, the ruler of the realm of dreams, It's not the same in the waking world. So he can be weakened in the physical world. Always remember, spirit don't supposed to dwell in the physical world. It's always in a weaker state. That's why they show you spirits possessing physical vessels, because they can't survive in that physical world, in that real world. So even as powerful as he is, he's still vulnerable. He's still vulnerable. And dreams, she said to him, dreams rarely survive in the waking world, but nightmares, on the other hand, seem to thrive there. So now, mind you, he's the king of dreams and nightmares. So if he doesn't thrive there as a dream, he may can only live or survive in terms of a nightmare, which can play different ways. And he himself ending up being in a nightmare, being captured for over a century, being stuck in a glass bubble for 100 years. So while everything is crumbling and everything happening with dreams and nightmares affecting him as a collective, or on a collective level, because that's what he is personified as, the ruler of that. So when you tamper with it, it's going to tamper with him as well. Okay, so let's really get into the show, right? So the time in this set, I want to say it says 1916, maybe 1906, somewhere around this area, but it's early 1900s, all right? So it starts out, he's the narrating, and we see there's a character. It's a doctor, some Dr. John Hathaway, but he comes to see Roger Burgess. Um, and he prefers to be called Magus, or Lord Magus. So obviously he's an inflated ego, man. You see, there's some type of ritual going on when they walk in. They're performing a ritual. Looks like they got a knife, doing some, all type of stuff as they walking by. Now, and he is the leader of what's called the Order of Ancient Mysteries, which is just symbolic to the leaders of these, secret society cults of this time. Because this is what the purposes of it for. Because these foreigners with this information don't see a purpose for this knowledge or for this information outside of material gain. So of course it's always going to be about material gain. So there's a boy who opened the door for him, who's seeing him through the house, and it's his son. You wouldn't think it's his son, but it goes to show you how he feels about this particular son, because he pretty much overlooks him. And which brings us to the reason why this doctor has come, is because he's brought him some sort of grimoire from the museum of some sort, and because it's Burgess wants to summon death and bring his son back to life, whom he lost in a war, or he lost on a battleship, something that had to do with some war. Okay, and so he's appealing to this man, because this man has also lost his son. So he's doing a dark arts of manipulation, preying on this man's weakness and his grievance to get him to bring him, present him with this grimoire. And he's like, of course, we're gonna bring death in. I get death to bring my son back, get death to bring your son back too. You lost your son the same way. So this is what his plan is. This is what his goal is. This is what his aim is, right? So, mind you, he just gets his hands on this grimoire and he just goes straight into a room to perform this ritual. Okay, so he doesn't really know what he's doing. He's really an amateur, but sometimes they get lucky. And it's funny because they compared him to one Aleister Crowley, and one could argue that he actually got lucky when he pretty much channeled or summoned Thoth, but that's another conversation for another day. But I feel like that's the symbolic representation of what all of that is, just put into one character, just to kind of show you, how that kind of goes. Okay, so he wants to summon death. He wants to capture death. So he and his order, they presume to perform this ritual to capture and imprison death. And at this very same time, because mind you, things have to line up. It's never a coincidence. It's just certain mixtures of things coming into play that certain things happen the way that they do. So at this particular time, we have Dream, or Morpheus, who is out trying to get the creature who is loose in the world. So he is present in the physical 3D world in distant country. Now he's not too far. He's off in Berlin, Germany, but that's where he's at. So Morpheus at this particular time is attempted to get Corinthian. This is the character's name that he's after. His name is Corinthian. He's a nightmare who has gone rogue. And it's interesting because when we were watching it, my daughter pointed out that he was Jack the Ripper. And that's who, because there's so many legends behind Jack the Ripper. And I thought that was so interesting that I hung on to that idea or that observation on her. She's great at observing movies. We might have to get her on camera and get her to talking with us about some of this stuff. But so he's out to capture Corinthian because he's gone rogue. He's killing people. You're not supposed to be doing that, man. So he has to bring him back in. That's his job. That's his duty. But in this unfortunate circumstance, this ritual, because they are the endless. They all encompass the endless. They just have certain specific realms that they rule over because that's his direct assembly. They're from the same source. It pulled him in and he was vulnerable because Lucian said that he was vulnerable. So whatever led up to this particular point in time, he didn't take the proper precaution in traveling to do what he needed to do in this physical world. So he ends up captured. Right? So he ends up captured and he gets pulled into the circle. You know how it goes. Can't get outside of the circle. And so they take his helm, take his sand, take his jewel because he's unconscious at this time. And of course, they know not to break the circle. Now, always there's a crow that travels with Dream or with Morpheus. So there is a crow at the time that is with him and that sees what's going on. So there's a crow that's there. We know crows are symbolic to that same energy, death, the darkness, so forth and so forth. So there he is now. He's trapped by some amateur of a musician. An amateur, all because he wanted more physical treasures and he really had no concern at all concerning the balance or what that would do. Like, bro, what would you do if you capture death? Like, don't you know there's a higher order to things that you are disrupting? But of course, this is the particular type of character that a Roderick Burgess is, because that's what happens when that type of knowledge get in the wrong hands, because it's that type of intention. It's only off of physical gain, has nothing to do with spiritual enlightenment, which is what the knowledge is really supposed to be for. But of course, it's corrupted, right? So they have to show you that corruption. They have to show it to you that way. This is what this pretty much gets you, right? So he don't have no concern over what he's disrupting, what type of imbalance he's creating, and what that would mean for anything or anyone else. And it really led to a lot of people, going into what they call the sleeping sickness. So they was falling asleep, not being able to wake up at all. And it affected millions of people everywhere in the whole entire world. But it's because he was captured because he wasn't there to maintain the balance to do his job. So now that he's captured, right, Corinthian, because at the time he knows that something had to happen to him, so he visits the Magus or the Magus, and he informs him on how to keep Dream trapped so that he could. And he only told him this not so Burgess could get what he wanted, but only so he could get what he wanted. See, everybody who helps us isn't always our friend, right? Everybody who helps us isn't always our friend. Sometimes it's to their means to their end as well. So he told him how to keep Dream captured. He told him to make sure that he, you know, and this is because Dream is the only one who can stop him, because he is the only one who can keep him from doing what he's doing in the real world, which is what he seems to be enjoying. And Roderick doesn't even know who he's captured. He doesn't even know which one of the endless he has, nor the importance of it, because he says, what, he's like, well, What good is it to have a man to the God that governs dreams? And Corinthians says, well, he's more than a God. And is man not governed by his dreams? And he also informs him that his three items can render him some of his power, like extending your lifespan, make you able to your lifespan, make you able to manipulate other people, things of that nature, being able to grant dreams to get what you want. So he told him that he had to put Morpheus inside a sphere of glass. So he had to encompass him in a sphere, in a sphere, in a circle, because he had to think about geometric shape in terms of creation. So if you keep him in a sphere, he can't create outside of that sphere. He can't, the energy can't go outside of that sphere. So he told him to keep him in the glass. Don't let anybody fall asleep around them. Told them a certain type of drug to give to the people so they wouldn't be sleepy around them. He lets them know that they were being watched by a crow. The crow was watching them, and Dream never travels without a crow, so the crow was always going to be a problem. So Roger didn't know what the hell he was doing. So he captured Endless, not even knowing what he captured, what he was capable of, what he could get. None of that. He don't know nothing. Complete ignorance. So he's completely ignorant, but he's competitive in being an occult master. He's driven by his own ambitions, his own physical desires, his own, you know, that's what he's driven by. So Roderick is trying to talk to him, of course. He wants to receive something. Give me something. Give me some power. Give me some will. Give me immortality. Because, of course, it's what they all fear. They fear the death. They fear the unknown. Not knowing what's for them or the nothingness that awaits them. The complete and utter darkness. Right? So he just wants something. Like a typical white man, European occultist, not to see anything beyond the physical, fearing death because it's not for him. So he's continuing to ask for gifts, continuing to ask for gifts. And Dream states that these are not mankind's to receive. It's not for you to have in your experience as a human being, nor did he have the power to even give them to Roderick. So he never said anything, was nothing for him to say to him because he couldn't give him those things. But his tools that he had that he took from Dream, they brought youth, they brought prosperity to Roderick. So he got a lot of good luck. You think about the ruby, what the ruby brings to you, So they still remain suffering from the sleeping sickness. And it's been well past the decade now at this point when they're showing us, because they show us Roderick's son growing up and him still being a prisoner pretty much in his basement or in his dungeon, so to speak, beneath his manor. So his son Alex, who was a child when this initially happened, he witnessed. He's growing up. He's very intrigued by him. He really seems as though he wants to let him out. But he lacks the approval of his father. He yearns for his acceptance. He yearns for his father's love. And he's afraid of his father. So instead of helping Morpheus, he ends up alienating himself more from him, or pretty much pissing him off because he shot the crow and killed his crow. So that really pissed Dream off. It hurt him to to do that to him. And he didn't forget it. He did not forget that. So um all of this is still going on. The world still suffering from the disease, from his absence. And this is where we see Roderick in a relationship with a woman, and she ends up being his baby mama. And she ends up stealing these items from Roderick when he tells her to go get an abortion. Well, I don't want no baby, go get an abortion. And she's like, okay, sure, I will. She robbed him, took his stuff, went off, left, boom, had a baby. We don't see her, right? So, um, that persists. That's what happened. That's how the sand, the ruby, the ham is stolen from Roderick. So now Dream is still locked up because, mind you, now he's been locked away for, at this particular time, it's been like 10 years or so. So he's seen a crow die. And now his items have even left from his presence. So he's been without these items that have pieces of himself connected to it. So he's at his weakest state, pretty much, so to speak. Now, further along in it, later on, so after, we see Roderick and his son, and they argue. He hits his head. Maybe he has a heart attack. I think maybe he has a heart attack, but his son Alice inherits everything. But he continues to keep Dream locked up. He continues to keep him there. Alice even gets old. At this point, he's been there 100 years. He's been there 100 years. Finally, the circle gets broken. He gets out. Even though Alice is in his old age, he grants him the gift of eternal sleep. So it's like endless dreams and nightmares. So that's what he did to Alex. He killed the crow, and he, in some way, felt like all of this was still burden upon him. So it was a gift, but it wasn't a great gift. You know what I'm saying? So, um, and at this very moment, they show us Corinthian knowing that he's free. It's time for him to run because he's just a rogue nightmare. Now, so now that Dream has escaped, he makes his way back to his realm. Now, after he gets back to his realm, all right. So now he's free. All right. So now that he's free, Corinthian also knows that he's free. So Corinthian is running. Morpheus makes his way back to his world, makes his way back to his realm. So Lucian finds him, and this is when, when he's able to finally make it back to his world. And what is it that he finds? He finds his world in shambles. He's back, but he's weak. He has to regain his strength. He no longer has his sand. He doesn't have his helm or his ruby. So his palace is pretty much in ruin. His power is low. He's deprived. He's been just stuck there, no nothing for over 100 years. So his power is low. He has to rebuild everything, including himself. He has to start over. So the realm has started to decay in his absence. And most of the beings from the realm itself have moved on. They've, either abandoned the realm, they've left because they are under the impression that Dream, Lord Morpheus has abandoned them. So if they think he abandoned him, they like, why we're gonna be loyal and stay and take care of this place. So they leave. So he gets the realization that he has to build everything over again. So when you coming into episode 2, this is the beginning of that journey. This is the beginning of the starting over. And the first thing that he has, or his first mission, is to set out and find his tools. Because he needs to regain his power. He has to regain his world. So he needs to find his sand, his ruby, and his helm. So in the wake of things, Lucian starts to tell him about the things that were occurring, or the decline in his absence and what happened during his imprisonment. So, as they're walking through the remains of the palace, she tells him that she kept a journal of everything, a chronicle of everything that happened while he was gone, but slowly those words began to fade, and eventually the whole library faded away. But even though she was the librarian, she remained. She chose to stay. She was indeed loyal to a T, but that's, mind you, this is a black woman playing this character. Nobody don't have faith like a black woman, right? So in his attempt to put the castle back together, he couldn't because he doesn't have the power. He's not able, right? He doesn't have the strength. So he knows he needs these tools. He knows he has to get his tools back. And, he comes to the realization that he doesn't know what he is without them. And far too often, we often become accustomed to, and we become attached to things of this world that allow us to identify and maneuver while we are here in this physical. And not only that, even in terms of if we're getting metaphysical, in terms of the ego self, we don't know who we are without that identity, beyond that personality. So that's when you get into soul identity, the true self, that which has mostly been suppressed. So, we are shown the Ethel. So we know that he wants his tools. Now we're shown Ethel. Now, mind you, it's been decades, but she still has a very youthful look about her. And that's, of course, because she had stolen his tools. So she had the ruby. She has the ability, the magic to be able to remain youthful and continue to live, so to speak. So Corinthian goes to see her. He wants to get her to kill Dream, to kill Morpheus, because of course he knows he's coming for him. Now he wants to bring her in because he's like, he's gonna come looking for his tools and you stole them. You stole them from Roger. Roger stole them from him. So technically, you stole them from him. So he's gonna come looking for you. He tries to threaten her. He thinks he can threaten her, but she has her own tools. She has her own protection. She has the eye of, or the amulet of protection, and it sends him back. So he thinks he can mess with her, but it sends him right back to the dream world. And when he gets there, of course he's leaving, even though Lucian is like, "Where are you going? Morpheus will be back soon." He's like, "That's why I'm leaving," because of course he don't want to be there. He doesn't like his creator. She says, "You have no loyalty to your creator." He says, "Cause he don't care about us. He don't care nothing about us." So this is how, he's playing out that role, so to speak, of, that dark path, the rebelling against the creator. So it's it's typical to see, rebelling against the creator, so to speak. Um, but she goes to see her son, and her son John is the one who has the ruby, or at least knows where the ruby is, you know. But he's been lied to his whole life, not knowing who he is. But at this particular time, he knows. He's telling his mother, "I don't believe nothing you saying. You telling me Dream is coming. You've been telling me that all my life, but you've been lying to me all my life. So I have no reason to believe you." So she gives him her amulet. She pretty much dies. I believe that probably occurs within the third episode, but so just in terms of it, everybody is getting their ducks in order, so to speak, because this old one has returned. This he is almost as in when your soul is awakened, when things have to start getting in order. It's like prophecy. This has always been the story. This has always been what it is. So when that ancient one returns, everything that had taken, you know, refuge or had advantage because of this, now has to do things accordingly to prepare for this great return of this energy. It's just always how it works. It's just the way it goes. So, Dream is realizing that he needs help to find out where these items are because he doesn't know. So he decides that he's gonna summon the three in one, and the three in one, it's the mythological, the legendary sisters, the seers. They're sisters, or technically you could say they are one and the same, just in three different aspects of past, present, and future. Um, it also represents like the maiden, the mother, and the crone, so to speak. But Lucian is like wanting him to get his siblings to assist. Maybe your siblings will help you. It's gonna cost you a lot to summon them, but he don't want to do that, but it's costly. What are you gonna bargain with them with? So he needs to find something that still remains in the dream world, that has a piece of him in it, because he created it. Created is from his essence. So that's what he needs. She says there's one thing. Now, this is an interesting bit right here because this is where we get introduced to Cain and Abel. So they travel, they go to see two brothers. You know, it's two brothers. This is Cain and Abel. He told them, it's he said to them, um, what did he say to them? He says, I'm here to take back a gift that I gave you long ago. And what it is a dragon. He gave them a dragon's egg long ago. And so it was a dragon named, what's the dragon? Gregory. Now, it's very deep with Cain and Abel. When you look at the dynamic of what is portraying you with the Cain and Abel, it's because we see Abel went along with it, with what was needed, without questioning. But Cain did not. Cain questioned it, right? Cain didn't want to go along with it. Cain didn't acknowledge the unfairness of it, right? He didn't want to do it. And this is a very deep esoteric message in this depiction of Cain and Abel. Because Cain questioned Lord Morpheus, even rebelled against it. And if you notice, they stayed in different houses. Cain said, come in into the house of mystery. Abel said, or to the house of secrets. I have tea. I have tea. Cain and Abel represent different paths. Cain is the left hand path, the path of the rebel, the path of the individual paving his own way. Abel represents the right handed path. He represents the path of righteousness. That's why Cain is the house of mystery, representing the mystery system or the dark side. Hence why he kills his brother. Right? So within the mystery, you go into the darkness to find the true light. So when you're dealing with secrets, religion carries with it the righteous path, the right-handed path. It carries or is burdened with secrets because it's a layered story that's a cover up. That's why it says I have tea. Tea is drama, right? But it's a very interesting depiction. But that's why he kills his brother. Abel is the compliant one, the right side, the lighter side, the one who is killed by his brother and resurrected. The righteous carries the secrets. It hides away the dark. See, Cain doesn't hide the dark. So he must be shown as the dark, i.e., as the murderer, anti life to take life, right? So we probably gonna now let's move it along a little bit. Let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. And so he comes there, but he's saying I come to ask Gregory himself. Now, so Gregory agrees, and he absorbs him. Pretty much, he absorbs um, Gregory because he it created him from a nightmare. So everything that made him what he was came from the essence of Morpheus himself. So therefore, he was able to absorb that power back because he needed that power. He's been captive, So and after this, we see Cain kill Abel, as the legend goes. So he calls Abel a suck up and he stabs him with a pitchfork. The irony of it, of using a pitchfork, because that's the devil's is always pictured with a pitchfork. So he stabs him with a pitchfork. We see later in the episode that he rises from the grave and he finds the egg that Morpheus left for them. So Morpheus left them an egg because he felt bad. He took their pet away from them, and it ended up being a baby gargoyle. And, um, you know, we see more of their personality. Cain being more of the moody, darker one, Abel being more of the light-hearted, joyous one. And he's talking to the baby gargoyle, Abel. He says to him, he says, he can't help it. It's who he is. It's who we are. The first murderer, the first victim. This is our story. And he says, do you even know what a story is? And he goes on to say, I'll tell you one. But so a story is the means of foundation of our minds a lot of times. See, depending on how the story we tell ourselves is the narrative that we choose to live by. See, we can choose at any given point in time to change the story. But see, when you are looking at allegories, myths, and legends, that's the point of them being rooted in what they are because they are a lesson. They are supposed to teach you something. They are supposed to exemplify or symbolize something. And you supposed to take that and internalize it because the story is reflective of you. That's the aspect of stories. That's where it comes from. That's the point of it on a spiritual level. Or, so that's the thing about stories. That's why storytelling is so important. And for eons, that's our means of communication. It was orally and it was told via stories. It wasn't until long after the Great Fall, we start to document these things, putting it in stone in different places all over the world because there was a shift in the energy, shift in time, shift in ages. Things were changing. So knowing we were falling into a slumber or a slumber would come or a capture would come, because mind you, dream fell in capture, right? So knowing that we're going to fall into a slumber, because that's the prophecy, that's the story, we left ourselves the clues, the hints, so that when we wake up, we will be able to remember. That's kind of the point of it all. So they show us Corinthian trying to convince Ether to kill the King of Dreams. And we see Dream trying to find his tools. So all he knows to go to, he want to summon the fate or the 3-in-1. So he has to navigate the waters to get something for the fate. And when we say on waters, this is very symbolic because the waters is like the abyss. The waters represent the collective consciousness of the collective unconscious. So it's like a whole place of where the minds are connected. It's like great water. Even when you're looking at the creation stories, it's water that encompasses the world. So it's like everything is about water because then you have primordial waters. So everything of creation came out of waters. So even when we're talking about dreams, that out of the dark of the mind, the conscious, the creative mind space is connected to water. That's why water has to do with imagination when you're dealing with astrology, when you're dealing with the personality or the astrologic. Water is imagination, right? And it's connected to how you feel, connected to your emotions. Why? Because it's connected to your dreams, connected to your desires. These have to do with the deep, dark crevices of man because this is where we have to go in depth within ourselves to reveal this part of ourselves. So he has to navigate the waters and he has to get gifts for them because remember when you want something from spirit, you have to present you got to give a gift. You got to present you have to offer something. You need an offering. Even when you go to church, they tell you to give money in the offering because it's all a part of symbolic ritual in the receptivity of it all because it's like an exchange, right? So it's different means of meaning physical and spiritual. So a snake in the physical, like he said when he grabbed the snake, but in the spiritual it's a similar transformation. So in exchange of, let's say, money. So to get money physically, that's an energetic exchange. That's a currency exchange. So that's why still in the spirit, that's still a means of a gift, but you can kind of get what I'm saying. It's about vibrations in terms of physical, spiritual, or what have you. But anyway, he's presenting offerings because he needs to know where his items are. So he's asking them to utilize their spiritual, you know, their spiritual energy. So it's just the same as when people have an altar and you having offerings at your altar. So it's a means of giving of energy. You know what I mean? So it's the same thing. You give them food. Of course, they ain't eating the food, but it's an exchange of an energy, what that represents, right? All right. So he it's harder for him to navigate these waters because he's been captive. His energy, his powers, everything is different. The waters are a lot rougher because people haven't had the King of Dreams there to help keep everything in balance. So everything is all out of balance anyway, right? So when he's the items that he takes, and he gets a crossroad. So one of the things he gets is a crossroad. Crossroad is usually symbolic to meeting an intersection point between the spirit and the physical. So that's where an interaction or exchange can take place. So that's why you see the crossroad. Then they say the hangman. The hangman, which represents surrender and sacrifice for the greater good. So it's the martyr energy. So think about in terms of tarot, when you see that card, they might be calling for sacrifice. Somebody might be playing a martyr, or they may be being a victim of something in that particular role or situation. So it's the symbolicy, because your subconscious speaks through symbols. So these things and what they symbolically represent. So this is a sacrifice for the greater good, symbolically represented in the hangman. All right, so and then there was the serpent, which is the symbol of transformation of life, death, and rebirth. So he has his three items. He's gathered his offering. He summoned the fates, which is the three who are one. The triple goddess is different expressions of feminine energy: the maiden, the mother, the crone. Each symbolizing a separate stage of the female life cycle and phases of the moon as well. So when you see that symbol, and it's the three symbols of the moon, the waxing, full, and waning, that's what that's representing in the triple goddess. And so it's often like one rules over the heavens, the earth, and the underworld. The consort of the triple goddess is the horned god. So when you see the horned god, the triple goddess, the witch, that's where that symbology comes from. So he calls them Hecate, and when he summons them, now Hecate was the original and most prominent ancient triple moon goddess according to, I want to say, Roman, Greek mythology. It's one of them. Yeah, they can kind of run together sometimes. But and it's not that it originates there. They're just the most known, but it's been in all of the ancient, civilizations as well. You can find it in ancient Kemet. You can find it in all the ancient civilizations as well. So, and like I said, it's the moon waxing, which is like the maiden, because the thing about when he first presented to them, the first one said, um, she was like, "Hi, what's wrong?" That was like the maiden. And then there was another say, "You look hungry." Um, that was the mother, right? And then there was the one that was like, "He wants something from us." That was the crone. So it's life, birth, and death. So this is what it's like. He's talking to all of them at once, but they are all in one. So one is in the past, present, future. So that's why they are the three in one, right? So, and in times, if you be honest, and if you think about it, time is a construct of your mind. That's why time is an illusion. It's beyond about how you identify your reality. It's the mere fact that it comes from your own the basis of your own mind. So that's what makes it an illusion. But that's asking people to kind of think that way drives them outside of their comfort zone. So, and that just makes me think about when I did the post about the time being an illusion, how it went so big, and it was just so much, back and forth on that post. And you'll see you get people who are pretty intricate in metaphysical information. Then you get people who are not, and you can see the vast difference in the way that people, you know, pretty much base their reality. So the people who couldn't fathom it, who couldn't understand it, live a very structured, physical, illusionary life. Meaning, everything was defined for them based on physical means. So they had no understanding of the physical being an illusion. This physical is an illusion, but that's not something that is for that common people or the masses are introduced to. They're not initiated into that form of thinking. So therefore, you're gonna get a lot of blowback when you deal with a lot of metaphysical information because it's reserved, and it's not that it's reserved because people are better. It's just reserved for a certain mode of thinking that's necessary to interpret it or to able to even be able to perceive it or incorporate it, so to speak. So it's just a difference in the operation of the mind, in the mental, the mindset, so to speak. So um, they accepted his offering, right? So they accepted his offering. He's told he can ask 3 questions, and he asks about the items, and of course they give him riddles, half truths, or bits of information is based in the past, based in present, or based in. So he still has to put forth some effort to find these items. But now he has something to go off of. At least he has something to go off of at this point in time. So, and that's pretty much what you get when you see that was episode 2, pretty much. So this is the start of his journey to get his tools back. This is what this has all been about. So when you get into the third episode, right? So the third episode is called Dream a Little Dream of Me. Now in this third episode, now that he has some information to go off of, so now he's going off of the information given to him about his tools. So what he was told about his sand is that it had to do with someone, Joanna Constantine. Now Constantine, of course, there's the common name. Now we are dealing with DC Universe, and Constantine is a part of the DC Universe. Constantine being the one who battles demons, exercise demons, all that good thing. So it's safe to assume this is from her bloodline. As he said, I dealt with a Constantine centuries ago, or whatever he said ago. So pretty much an ancestor of hers. So hoping if she carries the trait of her bloodline, she will be assisting to him, because we are who we are. That's what they kind of showing us when it comes to bloodlines. This even what we see with Roderick's son being power hungry, being greedy. Like if it's in you, it's in you. It's kind of full circle. So we are our ancestors. We carry what they carry. So a lot of times we have to break the bad cycles that they start, or we have to correct them. That's just generational, correcting generational trauma or breaking generational cycles, so to speak. So depending on your bloodline. But see, the problem is most of us do not know our bloodline today, especially not us melanated black people in America. So that's why it's important that you do your genealogy, because when you trace it and you can understand exactly how your lineage came into where it is. Because see, what we got to realize is this, right? What we have to think about is some people say, and they like to joke and try to mock people who be like, y'all say y'all Hebrews, y'all say y'all ancient Egyptians, y'all say y'all indigenous Americans. How are y'all everything? But what you have to realize is when you walk that genealogy back down, you you really uncover the real history. See, what they give us and what they have taught us is institutionalized. It's like romanticized information, but when you really dig, there's information there for all that. You can understand how later day Egyptians ended up being some Moors, and how some Moors, how you have cryptic Moors, cryptic Jews in pre-colonial America, how you have connection from Hebrew to some indigenous tribes. I mean, listen, it's far more vast knowledge of what you don't know than what you ever could know. So it's best that you empty your cup, because you don't know what you don't know. So when people do that mockingly, it's almost like a generated program response. When you get far enough into it, you can always tell a generated program response because it's straight out of the indoctrination. And it's like you're not gonna be able to build with that person because they don't seek outside of that indoctrination system. So if they don't seek outside of it, then they can't fathom what it is that you even talking about. So all you can really do is just be in your truth and just live out your truth. And your truth gonna speak for itself. And that's gonna plant the subtle seeds that's necessary. You know what I'm saying? But getting back to getting back to the show, in this season, in this opening episode of episode 3, we get introduced to Joanna Constantine. And so she was the last one with the sand. And so it kind of gives us a little bit of a backstory, somewhat by her dream. You know, as he stated in the very beginning, dreams show you what motivate people in the so-called real waking world. So what is a person seeing in their dreams can tell you a lot about that person. But so she's a Constantine, and as the name suggests, as the lineage suggests, that's what she do. They fight demons, balancing out the world, put demons where they're supposed to be. That's why when we see her, she's wearing all white. She's the representative of the light side or a light worker because she opposes, demons, the devil. She does God's work. So she do exorcisms and all that type of stuff. You seen Constantine before. If you haven't, you can check it out. But so she's doing a job. Initially, before doing this job, she's told the King of Dreams is back. She doesn't feel like that has anything to do with her or whatever the case may be. So she's just going about her business as usual. So she's called in to do a job. There's someone of importance who is suspected to be possessed. So she's coming in to do that. And so she's marrying, uh, who is it? It's like some royal person. I want to say a princess, and she's wanting to marry a football star. Football as in European football, as in soccer. So they're suspecting that there's some type of possession or what have you that's going on. So she goes in as a priest, and to as a part of the ceremony, she starts to speak the Latin to bring out the demon. And so the demon is exorcised from the dude. It actually comes out of the football player, out of the soccer player. So he's actually the one that is possessed because he wants still to be in control of the princess. I mean, think about it, someone of so much power and influence. So, but when this demon is exercised out of him, it's this big black dude, big black dude, big scary looking black dude, long dreads, long beard. Now, it's not a coincidence the demon is shown as black. No, that's not always the case. But this is deep when it is because we are labeled black. So when it comes to religion, the demon, dark side, everything of it, initially all of the things that's labeled as dark came from Aboriginal indigenous people. So everything that's written out in religion as the dark is indigenous, Aboriginal, melanated, pre-European colonialism. That's what that's all symbolically representative of. So it all came out of Aboriginal indigenous people's spiritual belief systems. So everything that isn't of your typical Judeo-Christian system falls under that demon umbrella by default because it's like demoted old gods, demoted gods of old put into this particular, opposition to what is. Now, so terminology wise, demon was affiliated with melanated people in old times of antiquity because of the nature of the science was incomprehensible. So all of that is a representation of the old original carbonated man of the ancient ones. So the ones of chaos, primordial, primeval. So that what they say is barbaric, savage. It just simply is referring to a people that never condition themselves for society. Doesn't denote lack of intelligence or lack of moralism. That's what the problem is. Doesn't denote there is no moralism. It just means that they're not accepting of the Europeanized view or the westernized view of things. So all that is a representation of the original carbonated ancient man. So the ones of chaos, right? So, but anyway, he we dream steps in, says his name, and the demon wants to bargain. So he wants to tell Dream who has his helm if they don't send him back. But Constantine gonna do what Constantine is gonna do, sends them back anyway. So the symbology sending a demon back to hell is binding. It's in relative terms, physical terms. What it means is to bind it down. It's to lock it down. So to bind the soul down in a vessel. So the soul is infinite. It's a source of encompassing all. But when you are bound to hell, bound to your physical, living through your physical vessel, is mostly a hell that one lives through. That's the trap of hell. That's why they be showing you hell be being a loop of experiences. So this is all interconnected, intermingled myths and layers of symbols all laid throughout it, depending on how you can see it and interpret it. So, um, but yeah, so in terms of the story of the soul, the legend of the soul, the fall, it's also in Christianity as the ones that fell from heaven. So the soul wanting to experience is a fall from heaven. So in that fall, right? In that fall, in forgetting who and what you are, being bound, forgetting, stuck in a loop, reincarnating over and over, is your hell. Is what you're bound to, right? So that's what you're bound to. So that's the trap of it. That's why black everything is bad. That and why is why everything that's black is bad. And that's why we carry that moniker because it's the fabric that this world, the perception of this world is built on. Black and white. That's why they show you the checkerboards. That's the fabric that the world is built on. Good and evil. And someone always has their role to play. So in this it's law. So this is why I'm always saying to study that which they declared evil because it all originates from the source of the first spiritual system, but it has been split so that we can be, ignorant of that, of our nature, of our spiritual foundation. It's a side effect of being a prisoner of war. You can't be embodied with your spiritual power. If what empowers you is your spiritual foundation, I have to take that away from you so that you can remain a prisoner, so that you can remain captive in captivity, whether that just remains to be mental or not. So in this instance, we see Morpheus. All right, so after all of this, Morpheus tells Joanna that they have to find his sand or both of their worlds will end. So he's telling her that, if my world, if I can't correct my world, it's gonna affect your world. The end of my world is the end of your world because as above, so below. Spirit realm, physical realm is nothing but an embodiment, a later embodiment of it. Then he also tells her that, I know you're having a reoccurring dream that won't go away, something that of a memory that she sees every time she sleeps, which is why she doesn't sleep a lot. So he tells her, help me get my sand. I'll also make sure you don't have that dream no more. I'll help you with it. So she remembers where she left the sand. She left it with her ex, and she actually had it, and it has no intention of being in the possession of humans, and so it kind of like put her in this sleep, in this dream. So even when Joanna went to the apartment. It was a complete dream she walked into, like it wasn't real. So he had to show her what really happened to her. And it's like she had aged dramatically. It pretty much like killed her. But well, it was killing her. And at that point, only the sand was keeping her alive. So when he takes the sand, he want to just leave. But she's like, you can't just leave. Like, you shouldn't just leave her like that. Like, you can't be this way just because you had a bad experience with Roger Burgess. Everybody isn't Roger Burgess. And, so in that sense, he at least provides her with a peaceful death because he can't save her, but he can give her some peace. And he does. He does. And we see him get ready to go to hell so he can get his helm. So before moving on, I don't think I said a lot about sand metaphysically. If you think about sand, right? Sand can be representative of passing of time. Because if you think about an hourglass, if you turn it over, the sand, when all of the sand is gone, it's a representation of time passing. Kind of brings to mind, um, when you think about that movie Old, and what it's about. Because, and if you think about the cover of it, the feet on the sand, like on the beach, because it's like sand symbolism can have, it can be negative and positive. You see what I'm saying? So it had a negative effect on her because so much time passed and she aged so rapidly. You know what I mean? But seeing sand is can be a sign. So when you dream of sand, the meaning behind it, the metaphysical meaning behind it is to pay attention to your loved ones and to your goals because nothing's permanent and time is passing by. So it's usually an alert to be grateful of your time. Appreciate the time that you have. So again, when you think about that movie, oh, the whole movie was about, they age very rapidly. They pretty much their lives went through their whole life within a matter of days, and that in itself has its own different type of fear. It was a terrifying movie, not in the sense of physically being scared, but the fear behind those dark unknowns like time, aging, death, because ultimately what comes with that is death, right?